welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is April 21st, 2022. If you are watching this recording from home, we encourage you to come join us live. We meet every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. It's a great opportunity for you to come and meet other members of the community, meet the maintainers, bring up any discussion topics you might have, whether that's a question on how to use any of the tools or a feature request, or if you have any feedback you wish to provide for what the team is working on. We would love to have you join us and get to know you and help you out. If you are unable to, if you aren't able to join us for any of these meetings, you can still reach us and engage with us on a few other areas. So we can be found in the Kubernetes Slack workspace, in the Carvel channel. You can email us in this Google groups. We encourage you to join the Google groups as well. You can find us in GitHub with any of our project repos. You can find file issues there as well. And then you can also find us on Twitter at Carvel_dev. If at any point you are interacting with us, whether it's in the meetings, on GitHub, email, Kubernetes, Slack workspace, et cetera, we ask that you please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is linked here, and it links out to our repos, and all of our repos have a link for that as well. For anyone that does join these meetings, and anyone that's on the call today, and you have something you wish to discuss with the team, please add that to the discussion topics section down below, and we'll get to it towards the end of the meeting. And for those that are using any of the Carvel tools, we would love to know more details on how you are using any of the tools. So we've created this pinned issue, and it just asks for a few details on yourself, on your use cases with the tools. And also, optionally, you can provide a logo for the organization that you're representing, and we will in turn add that to the adopters file. This is just a good way for us to understand how people are using the tools and help us develop better products and better features. So the more that we know how people are using it, the more we can better understand of how to best develop it. And also it helps the community understand how others are using the tools. So it helps them figure out things better, and also kind of builds up a community as a whole of who all is using the Carvel tools. So we'd really appreciate you adding your details here. We'd love to know more about how you're using it. And then just a reminder for anyone who's on this call, make sure to add your name to the attendees list and any organization that you're representing here. And then on to announcements, a little bit late this week, but as far as content goes, we have a blog post that was posted by CAP maintainer Rohit Agarwal. It's identifying ghost diff during kapp-controller reconciliation. Rohit, are you on the call today? Okay. So please go give that a read. We would love for you to provide any feedback or any comments you have about this blog post. Do you want to see more content like this? We would love just to hear your feedback on this. And then as far as upcoming content goes, I'm not sure if we have anyone that has signed up quite yet. Yeah, not yet for next week. So if anyone has any ideas that they want to share with the community, it doesn't have to be a blog post. It can be a short video or a long video. It can be if you want to share that you're presenting at a meetup or a conference or just anything whatsoever, a short demo. It doesn't matter, just whatever you find that's really interesting, that's Carvel related, that you want to share with the community. We would love to have you participate in this content sharing. It's not just restricted to the maintainers. We open it up to everyone in the community, and all you need to do is put your name and the author section, topic, and then type of medium. What are you delivering this information with? So and also Twitter handle if you would like to be tagged on that. 1 second, just muting. Okay. And for those that aren't maintainers, as a thank you, we will send you a Carvel t-shirt. So once you sign up and you're not a maintainer, just make sure to DM myself in the Kubernetes Slack workspace, and I will gather your information and make sure you get that t-shirt. Now moving on to releases, we had one release for kbuild 0.33. Is Joao on the call? Oh, I think he took off today. Does anybody have any information they want to touch on for this, highlight?
Not much more other than what's added or what's already shared there in the notes. But definitely thanks to the contributions we had from the community, JP, MCB, and Daniel, our old friend Daniel.
Yeah, thanks to this John McBride. He's a maintainer for the Tanzania Community Edition project. And then Daniel, he used to help out as a maintainer for Carvel, since moved on to other things, but he still participates in some way. So thank you to those folks helping us. Okay, on to status updates. Do we have anything updated with the project roadmap to go over today?
No real changes, just gave it a slight refresh to clear up some of the timelines when things are landing and to clear anything that has landed. But I think all of these things on here are in progress to some extent. So if you have any questions about any of these things or want to learn more, please let us know. You can ask us here or in Slack. Yeah, happy to hear from you.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, moving on to other stuff that's being worked on. Any updates for I'm not sure what that was. I'm gonna remove that person. That was interesting. Pretty sure that was yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
we got punked hard. So
What's that? Yeah, that was
punked.
We got punked.
Ashton
We've made
Kutcher
it.
here?
We've made it. Okay, resetting. All right, YTT. Who wants to go over that?
Yeah, I can cover the first topic. And if you weren't awake before then, good morning. The first bullet point there is a bug fix for a TOML decode. The YTT TOML package was having trouble decoding when we had an array of maps. So added a case to fix that. I want to investigate more into the actual TOML library if we can put an upstream fix to fix this problem. But in the meantime, the next release will have this fix in YTT.
Great, thanks, Garrett. Any questions for Garrett regarding this?
This is maybe a little bit out of scope, but like I have always wondered what it might look like for a YTT to have alternative execution parsers. Like, could YTT at some point support executing like over TOML instead by like using a similar parser or JSON? just curious. Well, I guess JSON is valid YAML, but maybe like HCL2 could be interesting too.
Yeah, it's an easy fit if it's a tree structure that allows for annotating, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, I don't know if a TOML parser, like I would assume that the comments are part of the tree in a TOML AST, but that's a good question for sure as well. Anyway, I've always just wondered that, and you know, just putting love into the TOML decoder as a library in YTT also makes me think, how hard would it be? But it's not really related.
Fun question.
For that, Lee. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Anything further on YTT before we move on to KCTRL?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Varsha.
Yeah, so we are also working on annotating data value schema with validation. So given a data value schema annotated with some validation rules, the final data value calculation that does not satisfy the rules will get some error message about violation. So the work is in progress on this.
I'm really excited about that, and I know that it'll also have some effects on the kind of UX, or improvements on the kind of UX that we can show to people in K-control status and kapp-controller app status, with validations kind of all showing all or more of the issues than just like an assertion failing the entire build.
That's a great.
Really,
That's on point, Lee. Like, actually, one of the things we're doing with the validations UX specifically is trying to make it easier to be readable in various contexts. So like like our schema type, like our basic typing error messages were very much geared toward doing getting that feedback on the command line. And having a well-formatted output that shows you something like a Helm error that says, hey, like right here, and here's the line, and lots of useful supporting context. And with the validations, we wanted to be sure that we knew there could potentially be a number of them, and so we're trying to keep them terse yet concise, so that they were very informative. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see the feedback we get on that attempt.
yeah, I've noticed that the current state of like packaging UX right now in community edition repos is that most packages don't have schemas, and that validation is done through assertions. And so when a package maintainer chooses to do that, then on top of that, it's like a vendor relationship where someone's like consuming the package with little knowledge of how it's been built. And so then you install the package and you don't know what things are required because the schema is not telling you, and because it's just hard to find the values file and the schema. And so then you try to install the defaults, and then now the package fails an assertion. And then it only tells you one thing that's wrong when you actually need to provide 10 values, right? And so getting some adoption with these schemas, and then having the validations be done with annotations so that YTT can output all of the issues at once, like in a single stage. I think that that's a really useful feature, and it has like a important effect on the consumability of things that are written by other people.
For that, Lee. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to KCTRL. Who from the team is able to talk more about this?
Yeah, sure. So the stuff we have been working on for the app tailing. So the first PR that we worked on finally went through, and that's pretty cool. It's been a long time coming. And so we've got another PR on the way, and that's going to be related to the commands that get introduced as package commands along the same lines, like maybe kicking a package install and stuff like that. One of the other issues that we're looking to address is, as of now, if a user updates like an existing value secret, it doesn't immediately get picked up by the package install. And so we just sort of planning to trigger a reconciliation and then tail the progress with the new secrets in place. It's been asked about a few times, and yep, that's one of the use cases we want to solve. And oh yeah, that's it. We're just hoping that after the first set of features related to this go out, we'll get some feedback and then iterate over it. That's it.
I think we're also looking for some feedback as to the name of the commands that we're using. The kick, not everybody's happy about it.
Jane, you know, audible.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry. So also looking to get some feedback on the commands that we are using. We're calling one of the reconcile now as kick. Not everybody's happy about it, but we like it. I like, kick the app, come on, reconcile now. It's like, do it now. So if you have some comments or feedback on that, I'd love to hear it. Also, do take it for a spin, see if you could try it out. The PR is merged, it's there in develop branch. So if you have some time, see how it feels. There's still time before we make it before it makes it to the release. So we could make those changes that you might request.
Sounds good. Sumik, do you have any links for any of these, or where can folks post feedback, or where would you prefer?
So we have like an ongoing issue with a bunch of stuff about the CLI. So I'm guessing people could put it in there. I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, great.
Maybe add it to the doc as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Sumik or Renu? Comments?
Vanu, I know you were asking for feedback on the name of that command, and I was definitely thinking about it in just after seeing it for the first time in the notes. And I like that kick is like shorter. I think that it's like easier to say than reconcile, but then there is like a little bit of a surprising like connotation where it like feels physical instead of where like reconcile is like very abstract and like neutral. So I know that people probably have expressed that maybe that's why they're not happy about it. I don't think it's like, I think there is like a cute kind of factor to it. It's like, I could learn to like that. That's just like my immediate feelings on it. And then also trying to be cognizant of like how other people might feel when they like see that in the command list.
Yeah.
I can't think of like another word that's like shorter.
Another suggestion was to use trigger. One was to use RN, which will be a short form for reconcile now. So like package RN. So, yep.
Yeah, in the Flux command line, we chose to use reconcile. And I think people know what that does. I think it's hard not to have the bias of like coming before from the team that did that design, right? But so I'm really trying to empathize with like, what does somebody new who's never used this tool like expect when they see that in the help? And I think it's pretty explanatory, especially if the help text, uses the word reconcile as well. Then it's like you're using synonyms together. So
Meanwhile, I'm racking my brain for a shorter version of tickle. I think that would be pretty cool. See, it's already providing delay. Like, is there like is there a Wordle for tickle?
Yeah, prod. You can't do push. You can't do update.
Nudge.
Yeah.
Nudge was
Nudge.
Ooh,
Nudge. I like
nudge.
nudge.
Oh,
Nudge is really good. It's a lot
Mm.
less physical than kick. You know?
and it feels more like friendly. Like,
Yeah,
let me give you a nudge.
I
You need
like
to
nudge.
reconcile that file.
Yeah, reconcile. It has other connotations. Like, what do we need to reconcile? Like, what are we making up for? Yeah. So, nudge. I like that one
Like that.
a lot, actually.
Nice.
Okay. I feel less guilty about bike shedding on this term. I know it was asked for, but we only have so much time.
all right. So we have some feedback here. So let's see what we do with this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you. Anything further on this before we move on to discussion topics? Okay. All right, John and Carrie, are you you're up now. Do you need access to the screen?
Don't think so. We could try it without there's a couple links there and we can hopefully direct folks. Let's see how that goes.
Okay.
Okay. So Carrie and I were chatting, was it yesterday? It was yesterday. About a new feature that is part of the validations function within YTT. And this feature is disabling the validations. Might sound weird, but what happens is perhaps imagine a package author puts in some validations on their data values, and then the person who wants to install that package knows better for some reason. Maybe that package author mistakenly created too constraining of a validation, or whatever it is, they need to get that package installed and they don't want to have those validations block their deployment. So, and then just in general for YTT, just it's it's a general valid function. So being able to do that in various use cases. So that's where we started from. And Carrie brought up a really great point in this discussion about like, well, how is this going to play out in the kapp-controller usage scenario? So YTT is integrated with kapp-controller as a template step. So how would a user who wants to install a package through kapp-controller be able to tell kapp-controller, don't run the validations on a package? So what YTT is going to do is provide a command line flag that says data value schema validations disable, and you tell it to set that flag, and it'll turn off that validation check. So we're wondering, is this something that, oh, well, then somebody would just need to plumb through that flag for the YTT invocation. But then we thought further about it and realized, wait a second, that would be typically defined in the package CR. Like in the package CR, that's where you're like laying out, like, here are my steps and here's the files where they come from, etc. And if there were additional parameters, that would be part of that configuration in the package. So when we're defining it, not when we're installing it. So, so we're wondering, is there maybe another way? Like, first of all, like, is this something from a kapp-controller perspective? So now let's slide our product owner hats on and say, is this a use case that we want to support? So thoughts on that, or questions like whether or not this is a clear setup.
the template gets applied at package install. So it would be, I'm always a little lost in this space, but right, there's ways of applying overlays to the package at package install time.
That's right. So on the package install CR, you can add an annotation in the metadata section, and there's a spot for extensions. And one of them, like you said, is one existing extension is being able to say, include this file as a part of your YTT invocation. So the person who's writing the package install is aware that the template mechanism is YTT, and they get to plumb through this little sidecar channel of annotations to be able to say, and include this additional file that is packaged up as a secret. Yeah. So are you thinking, Joe, that might be a good mechanism?
That seems consistent. We really have a hidden API in our annotations already. So why not toss another log on that?
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm really just trying to understand the, like, what you want feedback on. Like, I don't have like a clear enough mental model of the question yet. Like, I know that I've had conversations with Dimitri about how the app custom resource, right, is really designed for people who know exactly what they want to do and like which tools they want to stitch together. Whereas the package install resource, right, like that's more designed for people who are, vendors or third parties packaging up things for people to consume. And so it's sort of an abstraction, right? Like you're hiding the details about like which tools and what the pipeline is. And you can't just assume that like everything is a YTT program. It's good if YTT is under the covers. And if YTT is under the covers, it's also good to provide escape hatches to provide the full fidelity of the usage of YTT, right? Like YTT is designed for being extended by people you didn't know were going to extend your programs. So like including files as part of the whole YTT build is like really an important feature for package install to not hide away. But say then you're using a package, you're consuming a Helm template package, and there's no YTT at all. It's still valuable in the Carvel ecosystem to then be able to add YTT overlays on top of that. And then you're not, like the only file that you're adding is like you're bolting on another YTT post-processing step that is like sort of using standard out, or like an intermediary file as part of the whole project and then overlaying on top of it. And like, this is actually a different use case that might need a heuristic API behavior because it's functionally different, or just two different APIs.
But this is, hang on, man, because this is about disabling YTT validations. So they have to be there in the first place for it to mean anything to disable them.
So like turning off the features that we're adding in the data values validations, or like, are we turning off assertions like what people do today? Like that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, this would specifically be about turning off validation, data values validations. That's the scope of this specific question. And I'm trying to be careful because I'm trying to be precise here, because we are actually talking about how do we shape, how we answer this question is sort of sets a precedence of like how does a Carvel user, and there's many, right? This particular proto persona is somebody who is using a package. Like, how do they interact with the system when they do have knowledge of, hey, this particular package is using this templater?
And to me, I think what you're providing is an escape hatch for, I'm trying to do this, it's running into an error, I don't care about the error. I just want to do whatever I'm trying to do. Right? Like it's because you're saying don't validate it, like it's an I know better than the system flag. Like, you know, it's the dash dash, don't tell me what to do. You know, you're the computer, do what I say, right?
Yeah,
Are we? Yeah, go.
I was,
Don.
I was going to say, Lee, you asked an interesting question too, because when Carrie and I were talking about this, we were thinking very much about the YTT validation feature that we're developing, as opposed to the way that I'm interpreting your last question there was, well, there's this assert function. Are you talking about just swallowing any assertion failures regardless of where they come from? And that's not what we were thinking. We were thinking very specifically that this was about assertions that show up on data values, and they will most likely come from schema.
Yeah. Most likely, but they would work in other contexts too.
That we're the way we're approaching this validation mechanism, we're thinking it more in terms of, can you attach an assertion to a YAML structure, to a structure, that when you ask the structure, are you valid, those rules will get evaluated. And oh, it just so happens that you can do that on a data values YAML document that you've merged. Exactly. So, yep.
I'm really thinking a lot about like how YTT executes and like what that means for the programming model and why, like, I can definitely see instances where maybe there's some overzealous validation and, you know, you really want to put some custom thing in there. And then maybe you would want to turn that off. So like, are we first thinking about this as like a flag to YTT? Like, is this something that we know that we already want just in the YTT command line?
Yes.
Like not even thinking about, okay.
Yes.
Well, if the option is there, then someone can already enable this by themselves with the app CR.
Is it exposed to the app CR?
You can provide any option there, yeah.
Oh, there's a way to add any additional flag. Is that true? And that's not true for packages, right?
It's not, yeah. So that's why I was going on this long diatribe about what the package install is and why it's so different from the app CR.
Yeah.
Like, and why you might want to have different options depending on whether you are providing an escape hatch for someone who's post-processing with YTT versus modifying a YTT build that they know is inside of the thing that comes out of a package install. And because like at the end of the day, like you can provide escape hatches, and I'm a huge advocate for like getting out of the way of the infrastructure engineer because they deal with glue problems that suck all the time. It's like actually hard not to use expletives to describe that job, right? But then the nice thing about kapp-controller's design is that the app CR is actually so much more powerful than the package install that, like, if I ran into that problem, if the tool just encouraged me to just make my own app CR instead of consuming a package, then like that might be the right move versus adding a bunch of unvalidated annotations that are super hard to find and don't show up in kubectl explain. Like if you want to add action, like escape hatches to the package install, like I would do that by just adding fields that people can discover formally through the APIs. You know, like the annotations are super frustrating to use and it's like a real pain in the butt. Like it's like when I run into a limitation with the way that something is packaged, which happens a lot consuming community edition packages, like I'm like so tempted to just reach for the app CR. Like what did the package install output? Like just give me all the control because it just, the package install resource is constantly getting in my way.
That just feels like we screwed up packaging, right? Like that feels like a much larger discussion about what is our packaging model and why. But I think to me, the model has to be a package is something that is actually useful to someone. Like if we failed at packaging that badly, that's a really broader scope of discussion. But like the point is, I'm a consumer. I know the packages out there. I'm just trying to install Cert Manager and get on with my day. And there's a validation failing. I don't care about that validation because, right, I'm a grumpy, package. What do we call them? Infrastructure engineer. So I just need a like dash do what I say flag and let me keep going with my life. I'm just trying to install Cert Manager over here. And that's not even right. The business goal is never install the package. The business goal is use the package in service of whatever the business is trying to do. So like, just don't make me get hung up. But anyways, there's.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm getting the initial signal. Carrie, was there other stuff in here that we were talking about yesterday or questions that came up for you in this discussion? I was looking at the clock and I want to make room for all discussions, but I wanted to make sure if there's something you were thinking about, we made space for it.
Yeah, I think there is something interesting here. I'm not sure if we'll have time to dive into it, but I just want to bring it up. Like there are multiple personas that might want to disable validations. Like the person who is creating the package might want to disable validations for everybody that's installing it. And then the person that is installing the package might want to just disable validations for just themselves. So I think that aspect adds a bit of complexity because now it needs to be configured in two separate places potentially. So something to talk more about there.
Is this something that you can also programmatically disable when you're doing an eval, like library get eval?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's why that bubbles up to the YTT command line. This is already, if it's in the YTT command line, it's technically exposed in the app CR, but yeah, then it's like, how do you build it right so that the package install escape hatch, feels right, and like isn't just bolted on.
Yeah, and I do genuinely mean to question whether or not this is a use case to solve for. And you bring up a really interesting workaround, which means that like perhaps, and I don't mean to keep opening up this conversation, but yeah, I just maybe to wrap that up and be like, looks like we've actually got a couple different interesting options to consider here in terms of how this stuff integrates through to kapp-controller as a representation of the integration of the suite. Cool. Yeah, Rena, that's a great point. Did you want to add any color to that?
No, that's it. I think the person who has written the package or knows about how the package has to be installed would have put in those validations for a reason, not to trouble people, I'm sure. So if they are there for a reason, overriding it through a backdoor might not be one of the wisest things for consumers to do. So yeah, but there are people who understand these packages and know how to do it, but not all of them are like that. Again, what percentage of people are really, how do you say, educated enough to take these calls, and what percentage are just plain users? I think that should be considered also.
Yeah, that's a great point. It spins up for me this notion about policy and mechanism in trying to help people who don't yet understand, like have a gap in their experience or understanding, not hurt themselves with the tooling, and at the same time somehow be able to allow those who more deeply understand than maybe like their situation. Like someone says, hey, I think that the resources for a particular deployment should only be this large. And they have great reasons for it. And then someone in just like some weird corner case situations, no, those resource limits don't make sense because of the way we do our virtualization and the way we bill out our compute. And it's like, it's not that this other person didn't know, like that they're somehow unskilled, but there's a piece of information they just couldn't possibly have known that needs to get overridden.
Yeah, and if we are planning to introduce, sorry, just one last point. I think we generally use dangerous blah, blah, blah when we are doing these things. So maybe that might be something to consider.
Nice add. Great.
I really agree with everything that everyone is saying here. And Renu, like your points about the package maintainer, like knowing what their validations are for and like what the gotchas are is super important, right? Because most people aren't going to like go so deep into the package to like understand why they want to override the thing that's causing them an error. And there are already mechanisms like for people to, you know, just break out of the package install resource. And then John, like you talking about giving people escape hatches, but also not giving them too many knobs where they inflict pain on themselves. And I think I just realized that we have all these annotations on the package install resource that are, it's like really, the documentation is like hard to get to because it's not in the Kubernetes API and it's hard to use and it's really not very flexible anyway. Like what if we just had a way for like a documented field on the package install resource to YTT patch the app resource that it produces? Because then anything that the app resource could do, it's like you've provided the ultimate escape hatch to somebody who really knows what they're doing at the package install layer. And then it still gives them the usefulness of consuming a package, right? Then they could do anything. They can add flags to something from a particular array indice. They could do custom matcher funcs. They could run like the full power of YTT on the value of a package install. Right. And then you wouldn't need weird annotations or anything. It's literally like you're just giving the person, say, hey, whatever the heck is happening from underneath this abstraction, you have full control if you really want it. You know, and then you don't need special annotations that change like the Helm template name or, you know, the target namespace of something or, you know, whatever. Like you don't need to have special annotations that add particular flags to YTT builds. Like you can just write a YTT program to change the app resource that gets produced.
Nice.
That would solve like a lot of my frustration with the package install resource. Like I would be able to do so much with that. And it still keeps the contract of like between the package consumer and the package maintainer like really clear so that the package maintainer's wishes are respected in most cases. Cool. I don't know if I explained that clearly enough or anyone maybe has an opinion on it, but I'd be happy to chat about it more. So we could probably move on unless anyone else has.
Yeah, agreed. This has been a great discussion. Thanks. This is way more than what I thought we were going to get out of this. Is fantastic. Thank you. But yeah, I agree. Let's hit the pause on this and we'll take this into Slack and other places.
Great. Thank you so much, Lee and Renu. Great discussion on that. Moving on to the kapp-controller.
You know, that's really just a share. I think unless anybody's not literate, all the information's on the screen. We can go to the next item.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on that?
50% faster sounds fantastic. Is it fantastic?
It's a benchmark, John. I'm lying to you.
I know that. I just want to feel good about it. Just tell me if it's good.
Well, it's all true within the limits of a benchmark.
So you're using statistics.
Joe, I'm just curious, like, what's like the magnitude of that number? Like, is it like 50 milliseconds versus 100 milliseconds, or like
It really
5
depends.
versus 10?
So it really depends on the Kubernetes, like what's underlying. So like it's a really different number on Minikube than it is on GKE. But you could think of it, if it took a minute to deploy something on GKE, a large package repository, now it takes closer to 30 seconds.
That's really important.
Cool. Well, anyways, like it's still a benchmark. It's a synthetic measure. It's still going to take 5 minutes to install 20 real packages. These are like one of the gotchas here is that this benchmark, the packages have no spec at all, like they're empty brackets. So I'm only measuring the overhead that kapp-controller's adding.
That's something.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
Do we also have a measure of the number of calls that we are making to the API server that have reduced?
Indirectly, I know that's a big concern in CAP, and it that turns out to be not trivial to measure by like package repository in particular. It's like different pieces keep calling each other back and forth. And so anyway, I've been working on a different feature we'll talk about later for package repositories. It's very clear that if you want package repositories to reconcile quickly, the way to do it is to hit the API server as little as possible. But you could also say the way to have the fastest possible like custom resource is to never use it. So it's a little bit of a curse, because as soon as you start using your custom resource, you talk to the API server. As soon as you talk to the API server, you pay a penalty for talking to the API server. But anyways, short answer is no, sorry.
Okay, so just a side note here, if anybody's interested to know, there is a flag called as apply check interval. Apply check interval is when you ask, when CAP goes back and sees whether this particular resource has been applied or not. It will, at what interval should be checking? Right now it is set at 1 second. So every 1 second it is going to go back and check whether this resource has been applied. Now it works well for small resources like config maps, where it comes back immediately. But there are some resources which take a lot of time. And what we found out is that if we change the interval to around 15 seconds, the number of calls reduce drastically to the API server on the cluster. And the time does not reduce. The amount of time for package install does not reduce. So basically all your pods, replica sets, and whatever are the big resources that take a lot of time, they usually come back in 15 seconds of time. So we are generally making these calls for 15 seconds, which is bombarding the API server there. So I think that is something that, and it is useful for installations like tap install, where we are doing some 30 packages at a time, which should come back within 10 minutes of time. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have that flag added there.
Internally, sorry, internally kapp-controller for package repository, I forget the flag, but it's a fire and forget. So there is no waiting, like it sets that like wait to 0 seconds. So anyway, I think there's good context, but specifically package repository, we don't use CAP in that mode at all, right? Like I have to check the flag, but you set something to 0 seconds.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Renu. Thank you, Joe, as well, for bringing that up. Moving on, we have about 4 minutes left. Lee, is that enough time for your discussion topic, or would you like for us to move it to next week?
Yeah, I think it's enough time. I did link a Slack thread in Project Carvel internally to an external Slack thread in the Kubernetes Slack where Dimitri and I have been talking about this problem a little bit. But basically, I just I wanted to know if anyone has thoughts about programmatically exposing, like as a library function, all of that really juicy text template behavior that's available, I think, only through annotation right now. Since there are, I've been playing a lot with like modularity and like moving different blobs of data and different folder structures and using libraries. And this is something that I ran into where it's like, if I have something that is a text template, and then I want my data values from some context in a higher part of the project to template that thing, then it seems like it's not possible to do that, or maybe I don't know what the library function internally is that maybe is somehow possible to call. I also don't know if there's a way to add annotations maybe to a document set or something, or to a library instance before I template it. That could also maybe work. Like pre-evaluation, if there's some way to modify the structure of the library instance. I don't know how to do that, but maybe there's one way to do that. So yeah, I'm interested in this, and basically the problem that led me to this is I have a Helm template that I put a bunch of YTT template strings into the data values, and the Helm template outputs as a valid YTT string template, where like you could recurse the fields and replace data values into the output of the Helm template. And I wanted to consume that as a library and, execute the text template logic. And it didn't seem like that was possible.
I see.
Hey.
And those are YAML documents, right?
Yeah. I mean, I could even show what the workaround that I had to do was, but the details are in the Slack thread as well. I ended up doing, is it possible for me to grab screen share really quick, Nancy? Maybe if I did this share. So hopefully you can see the YTT code on my screen. Make it just a touch bigger. I wanted to library get this vCluster library, and that vCluster library is made using Helm. So when I Helm template, I just set this string for this networking option as something that YTT could potentially template if the templating feature were enabled. But the templating feature is opt-in per document. Right? So like if I actually go into this Helm chart, in like the API deployment, I think here's my service cider template outputting here. I have to add an annotation to this document for YTT to do that string templating. And that's not something that the Helm chart is going to expose to me. So I need to do that in the YTT layer. But there's no way for me to do that. I've tried like adding the annotation here, and it's because this thing is actually already evaluated, right? Like that's never going to be templated after this point, right? There's nothing I can do before this function that allows me to text template to my knowledge. So instead, the workaround was I did a blind string replace by decoding or encoding the YAML, the Starlark structs into YAML, doing a string replace on that specific thing for this specific value, and then yeah. And I also had an overlay version of this, which was, in my opinion, a lot worse. because it required me to know like every single field where something was. So I liked the regex approach better, but what would have been really nice is being able to just call text template on every single document in this document set. So I thought that that might be an interesting thing to expose as a library. Anyway, that's all I have to say. And happy to chat about it later.
Carrie, was there something you wanted to chime in on that? I think we collided.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was reading through that thread earlier, I had a hard time understanding like what was needed, what the input and output was. But your example helped me. If you could provide like an input and expected output to that thread, I think I might be able to do some research on what's available. So that would be helpful for me.
Ditto. For the record, no, you're not missing anything. Yes, you get back a doc set. Yes, it's already evaluated, and the things that you've tried are the things I would have thought to try first. So this would be a very fun exploration into bringing more programmatic capabilities around templating into the Starlark execution environment. Yeah.
I think if we exposed the compile and the parse functions to like a easy way to walk any Starlark struct, so that it's not YAML specific or TOML specific, it's just a Starlark struct and it works on keys and values, and it outputs a new Starlark struct that's fully templated, then that function would do exactly what I need. You probably just need a version for the scalar and for a tree or struct, and then yeah, but it's just, I'm not going to write that, you know, in my YTT program. Like, it's probably something that should be in the standard lib.
Yeah, you just made the whole meeting go full circle for me, because in the beginning we were talking about like, can you expose TOML as a structure? It's like, yeah, that's what we currently call a YAML fragment in your Starlark types. And if we made that available and you have all the capacity of like the stuff underneath that is genuinely that structure with those annotations.
Okay, so we are over time, but just want to give anyone else some space if they have any other comments to that. Nope. Okay. Thank you, Lee, for bringing that up as well. Really appreciate it. And for those that are watching from home, if you have any feedback or any comments on what was discussed today, please reach out to us, join us at the next meeting. We would love to hear from you. And, you know, we want to meet you as well. So with that, we hope to see you at the next meeting, and, you know, we look forward to meeting you. Thank you.